Hello and welcome. This is Jennifer McGuire. Now, I'll be honest, I absolutely love the look of watercolor, but I have a hard time with it. I'm not a true watercolor artist. I just like to play with it. So I'm always looking for new techniques or new ways to get a great watercolor look without much effort. So today I have a fun technique for you that's very simple, and it involves stamping with a watercolor and then painting it in. And it's really easy to do. You end up with the color outline, the solid color outline, with the soft watercolor inside that matches perfectly. Now, I picked a simple tulip image to use for this technique. I would encourage you to start pretty simple with a simple outline image like this tulip from My Favorite Things, and then you can work your way up to a more elaborate image. For this watercolor stamping technique, you could use any watercolor markers you already have. However, I'm going to be using these new Spectrum Aqua markers. I'm really impressed with these for a few reasons. Now, these are rich, vibrant dye-based inks that give really smooth coverage. They have two tips, which I'll show you in a moment, and this ink is water soluble and it really blends well with water, so it's great for watercolor techniques. Now, what I find extra special about these markers is, in addition to the flexible brush tip, which is common with watercolor markers, this has a super, super fine tip. I mean, a very, very fine tip, which is great for saving the day when you're doing techniques, which you'll see in a moment. So you can see that super fine tip there. These seem to be super high quality, and the other thing that I found that really surprised me about these is when you color this marker onto a stamp and then stamp that image, you get pretty good results. It's pretty solid. So if you took the brush tip and colored it right onto a solid image, a solid stamp image, and stamped it, it stamps pretty solid. Now, I am going to be coloring with the brush tip onto this outline image. Now, when you put a marker on an outline image and then stamp it, it doesn't always stamp solid. That's just the nature of trying to get marker onto a thin line stamp. But we'll be able to fix that today, which I'll show you. So I'm just using two different greens on the leaves and the stems, and then the purple marker up on the tulip itself. And then I'm just stamping that onto watercolor paper. Now, as I mentioned, when you stamp with markers on an outline image, it's not always clean and crisp as you see here, but that's okay because we have that super fine tip that we can go and fill it in, and it'll look perfect when you're done. But again, if you use the brush tip of this marker on a solid image and stamped it, you'd be pretty surprised about how solid it stamps. So these markers would be great to color in stamps just for plain multicolored inked images. Okay, so I'm going to trace over all of these outlines, and then we're going to fill this in with water to create a watercolor look. But I first want to make sure that my outlines are nice and solid so that I have that solid outline when we're done. So I'm using a watercolor brush, a water brush today. So there's water inside my brush, and this is very simple. All I'm doing is going and filling one area of my stamped image with water. And what happens is when the water touches that outline, it kind of sucks the color in and starts the blending on its own. So I just added water. I didn't do anything else. Now I'm going to do this to a few different areas that don't touch, and then I'm going to set it aside to let it dry. You don't want to do two areas that touch because the color will just bleed between the two and you won't have that nice crisp outline. So I'm doing one petal on one tulip, another petal on another tulip, and then this one leaf. And then I'm going to set this aside to dry and do another set of tulips. So I'm going to do 3 different sets of tulips today to show you as examples. So you can see here how you get that soft watercolor in the inside just by adding water. I didn't do anything else to it. Now, while that dries for a little bit, I'm going to go ahead and get another tulip ready. Now, as you see, when I'm coloring on with this brush tip, I'm actually coloring on with the side of the marker, the side of the brush tip, not the tip of the brush tip, because I don't want to damage that tip. I'm not sure how strong these tips are because these markers are new to me, but I don't want to take the chance by ruining them. So I like to use the side of the marker tip, and I always do this when I'm coloring onto a stamp. I really love this pink color. This is beautiful when you stamp it. Now on this one, I decided to put both pink and gold onto my tulips so that when we add water to it, you get a blend between the two. Okay, so now I'm just going to stamp this onto watercolor paper. You could huff on this or breathe on this to add a little moisture back in, or you could mist it with water if you want to, but I decided not to because I just wanted to leave it nice and solid. So now, again, I'm coming in with a little bit of water. You could use a brush and water if you wanted to. And I'm allowing the water to just kind of absorb that color from the outline into the center of the image. I like to let the watercolor sit a little bit after I've applied it to an area so that it has some time to absorb that color into the center. So you'll see me switch back and forth between my tulips here. So now I'm going back to this one. It's not completely dry, so there's still some moisture on those petals, but I decided I wanted to add some shading to it. So I just want a little bit of darker color towards the bottom of these petals. But I'm not making too much effort to do this. This is very easy. All I'm doing is coloring some of the marker onto my craft sheet, picking up that color with my brush and just dabbing it in right towards the bottom of the petals, and I'm letting it blend with what is already there, not spending much time at all, not making any effort to blend. I just let the water do the work for me. You could completely skip this if you want to and just leave it as is, but this is a great way to add that look of shading to it. Now I'm going to do the same for the leaf. So I am scribbling some of the green marker, both shades of green, onto my craft sheet, picking up a little bit of the color with my wet brush and adding it to that wet area that's already on my paper. Now I will say if you don't have a craft sheet to scribble your marker on, any piece of plastic or an acrylic block would work great too. And I'm not doing much here to blend these colors. I'm just kind of dropping the color in to the moisture that's already on the paper and letting it do the work for me. Now I'm going back to this one while that purple flower dries a little bit, and I'm going to add a little more color to this. Since these tulips used a very soft colored marker, you don't get a whole lot of blending going on in the tulip itself. So I'm adding more to this one. The more vibrant the marker, the more it does blending on its own and brings more color in on its own. And it's actually easier with the darker markers. You can see how much that green kind of blended in on its own. So I'm switching back to the purple here so that that last tulip has a little time to absorb. And I will say you can do this technique with some dye-based inks. The color will pull in a little bit, but not nearly as much as you would get from these watercolor type markers. So you can try what you have, but I do believe that some work better than others, and these really work well for this technique. So I decided to add a little more depth onto these purple areas. So I'm scribbling some of the color on my craft sheet, picking it up with my brush tip and adding it right in. I didn't take any time to blend. Here I've got the heat gun, and I'm kind of letting the heat gun air blow the color around and help with the blending. And it also just kind of speeds it up. So if you don't want to take too much time to do this, you can speed it up too, speed up the drying by using the heat gun. Now with this one, I just stamped the tulips. This is a third example here. I stamped those tulips with an orange marker, and I'm just quickly doing all of the steps at once here. So you can see how after you've practiced a few times, how quickly you can go in and do one image. And just use the heat gun to dry each area before you move to one right next to it. And I just love the results here. Here you can see how you get like this kind of interesting artistic edge to your stamping with the watercolor in the center. And it's all the same color with the solid outlines and the soft centers. It's just beautiful. You can achieve watercolor looks like this with many different techniques, but I just think this is a very simple one. Okay, so now it's time to die cut those tulips. Now the matching dies for these tulips you can't see through, so it's hard to line up the stamped images with the die cut and make sure you die cut it perfectly. So I'm going to show you a trick. Here's the matching die. I'm going to die cut it from a piece of scrap paper here, and I'm going to use the negative space to help me die cut my tulips. So I am going to position this negative space right over my tulips that I've stamped and colored. I'm going to make sure it's lined up perfectly so you can see it just fits right around my stamped image. And I'm going to take my die and put it right in its spot, kind of fit it right in there. It kind of pops in like a puzzle piece. Then I'm going to use a little bit of tape to tape these pieces down and tape the die in place so I can run this through my machine again. So what's going to happen is when I run it through, it's going to cut through my stamped tulip piece. So you can see here that it cuts right through and my stamp is perfectly positioned. So that piece the scrap piece that we created, that negative space, is just kind of a holding spot for me. I'm going to do it again so you can see. I'm going to line this up with my stamped image. I'm going to take the die and kind of pop it right into place, use the tape to hold it all down, and then run it carefully through my die cut machine. This is a great way to use coordinating dies, and it works every time. So there you can see the perfect results that you get, and it's so much easier than trying to do the watercolor on a pre-die cut piece. So let's go ahead and finish the rest of the card here. I have this background stamp. This is new from My Favorite Things, and it's just very elegant. I'm going to ink that up with Versamark ink and stamp it onto some light grade cardstock that I have cut into a 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 top folding note card. Now, when I take this off, you'll barely see it because it's a clear sticky ink, but I'm going to add some fun embossing powder. I wanted to keep this kind of a classy, elegant look, so I am using some Wow Silver Pearl embossing powder. This is just a beautiful, classy embossing powder. If you're always looking, or if you're ever looking for a background that has a little bit of interest but isn't too distracting, this is a great embossing powder for you because it looks good on any color of cardstock, including white. It just gives kind of a pearly, silvery shine that is kind of tone on tone with your background color. And look how beautiful that is. I just love the results. Okay, now I am going to die cut some background pieces to add some layers onto my card. I'm using these border dies from My Favorite Things. I'm going to use the one you see there on the right. I really like these because they add some fun interest to your card, and there is a faux stitch line on both sides of the cut line. So I'm going to kind of position this here, and I'm going to plan to put my tulip right at that corner piece there. And so I'm just kind of deciding where to do this. And when I cut this, I end up with two pieces, and I'm going to use them on two of my cards. And both of them will have that faux stitched edge on it. I think this is fun instead of just doing a straight line across your card. Okay, so I do have a third card to do here. So this time I'm going to use the My Favorite Things. This is like a diagonal stitch rectangle set. So the cut line again is in the center, and it does different size rectangles. And on both sides of the cut line, there are diagonal faux stitches. And it's just something different and easy and adds a little bit of interest to your project. So I'm going to use the positive space here on my third card. Next, I'm cutting some white craft foam to be slightly smaller than the white pieces I'm putting on each of my cards. The reason I'm doing this is I want to raise these white pieces. I want to pop them up, but I also plan on mailing these cards, so I like to have even dimension behind the white pieces instead of just strips of foam tape, because with a foam tape, we'll just kind of crush the cardstock when it goes through the mail. So you see that white fun foam or craft foam is slightly smaller than our white cardstock, and I'll sandwich it between the white cardstock and our note card. And this gives a nice, even raised dimension. And I'll do that for all of the white pieces, the 3 white pieces for the 3 cards. Before we assemble our first 2 cards, I need to stamp the sentiment. So I picked a sentiment from a My Favorite Things stamp set that's very simple, and I think it's great for these cards. Stamped it with black ink. Now, after I've stamped these sentiments, I can go ahead and add the craft foam or the white foam piece that we cut to the back of it. So I put some adhesive on the cardstock. I'll lay my foam piece on it, add some adhesive to the foam piece, and then I'll add this to my card. And that foam piece will really give great even raised dimension. Now I'm going to put some adhesive on the back of my tulips and also add that to the card. I love how simple and quick these cards come together. Okay, so now for that third card, we had the one with the rectangle in the center. I used a different sentiment on this one. This is actually a sentiment that comes in with the stamp set with the tulips. So I'm stamping this towards the bottom also with black ink, and I just love how elegant these greetings are also. Now this time I'm just going to put a little bit of foam tape behind the tulips, just so those kind of pop up. I don't use a craft foam behind small pieces like this because they seem to make it through the mail okay. But I do use the craft foam behind large pieces like this white one. So I'm going to go ahead and glue that in the center of my third card, and we're good to go. I like to keep the card simple so the focus is on that colorful watercolor in the center. So there's a way you can get a wonderful, really easy to achieve watercolor look using watercolor stamping. Now, if you are intrigued by this and you want to learn more, you can head over to my blog at jennifermcguireinc.com, where I'll link to other techniques like this. If you are interested in the products I use, just look in that YouTube description below. I link to multiple sources where you can find the products. Thanks so much for stopping by. If you found this helpful, please give it a thumbs up and subscribe so you can see more videos in the future. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.